Welcome, subscribers, to Gravity Well Miniatures Painting. My name's Chris. This is the beginning of my YouTube content for Gravity Well Studios. Here I'm going to be going over, tips, tricks, tools, things like that. Hopefully I'll be able to do some live shows soon. Show you kind of what we're about here at the studio. So, first thing we were going to go into, like I said, I wanted to go into today. Obviously, I've already done the welcome video. I'd like to go into a little bit about tools, paints, things like that, stuff that you would need should you want to get into your own miniatures painting. So, I guess we'll go ahead and start off with, one of the more important things, which is going to be brushes. So if you want to, get into those. Now, it should all be noted that when it comes to anything, when it comes to miniatures, this is all subjective. This is the stuff that I use. I've many years of practice. Some people, performance varies. It just depends on what people like, what some people don't like. So this is what I use. Take it as you will. Don't take it as gospel. If you happen to find something better, cool. If not, I'm just trying to help you make an informed decision. So, also it should be noted, everything that I'm going to be showing you should be able to be found at your local hobby store, craft store, or gaming store, with a few exceptions which I'll go into. So first things first, we're going to talk about brushes. So again, typically you can find these at gaming stores. I find them to be a little overpriced. So that's kind of, again, up to you. There are some gaming companies that use their name to brand certain products. I find it a little overpriced. So that's just me. But again, brushes, you can go to any hobby and craft and arts and craft store and you can find brushes. You get into them, or you get out of them what you put into them. So if you buy some really high-end ones, they're going to last you a long time, but sometimes that's not what you need. I tend to keep mine fairly on the mid to cheap end just because of the nature of what we're doing. I'm not like going out and painting the Mona Lisa. I'm painting miniatures. So yes, I hope you'll get some good some good product out of it, but just depends on what you're looking for. So first thing you're going to need, obviously, are brushes. So these are my, just to show you a couple of some thin bristled brushes. These are good for general all-purpose work as well as detail work. I usually keep anywhere between 3 and 5 thin bristled brushes for different types of work. It just kind of depends on what we're looking for. Obviously, you're going to have to replace these after a while. They sit in water, things like that. You'll need to replace them, but it just kind of depends on what you're looking to do with each one of them. That's why I, have a couple different variations of one. Some are, super fine, like this one is kind of what I use a lot of for my detail work, whereas like this one is, for mid, range bulk painting, things like that. So these are some, like I said, just good all-around brushes that, are good for that, things like that. These are some of my cheaper end brushes, but they do the bulk of my grunt work. And I end up replacing, grunt work, I'm talking primers and base coats and stuff like that. So these are, kind of what you're looking at for, base coats, things like that. I use these for a lot of my bulk jobs, like if I'm painting a tank and I need to paint like one coat, same color over and over again, I'll use like one of these two brushes, it has those super wide bristles. And then, same thing goes with this one here. Now, this is one that I kind of made myself. Everybody I've never painted with has made their own. It's for dry brushing. I took a kind of a longer brush, and I just chopped the bristles down, as you can see. Real close here. Sorry, it's my first time working with a webcam, so maybe a little bit out of focus. But you can see it's just the bristles are super stiff. And I just chopped this thing down. It's great for doing highlights if you're doing dry brushing techniques. And we'll talk more about dry brushing in another video. But this is great. You can put a little bit of paint on this. If you just want to get some, accents going, things like that, this is just fantastic for this. And I always like using a cheaper brush for this because you tend to put your dry brush through the ringer. You lose bristles pretty quick. So, I go for a cheaper one just because I'm going to end up destroying it in the long run. So those are your basic brushes. Again, mileage may vary. Just depends on how you want to do and what you're trying to work on. Things like that. So, other tools you're going to need are, Again, found at any arts and crafts stores, you're going to be looking for an X-Acto knife, razor knife, something like this. A lot of miniatures come in plastic sprues, so you'll be able to want to chop those off and chop some of the flash off, and that's where these come in too. Just little basic, wire clippers. These will help you get your miniatures out of the plastic sprues with a minimal amount of fuss, and you won't have as many burrs, so you won't have to shave off with this. Now these are also good. Now X-Acto knives also work well with pewter miniatures. They have a lot of flash on them from the molding process. You can scrape that off pretty easily. Definitely get yourself some extra blades for these. Just be very careful because they are sharp, and you don't want to end up cutting yourself. Now here's one, a couple that a lot of people don't know about. I'm a little unique on one of them. I like to get itself just a little circular file just for certain jobs. If I got like a inner arm, something like that, in between legs, and I got a bit of flashing I want to get rid of, having this little file helps get a little bit of that flashing out, make things look a little natural. And then there's this, which a lot of folks don't know about. There we go. And it's just a pair of medical forceps. You can get these at any medical supply store, a few bucks, no big deal. Now people are like, why do you need forceps? Aha! Little trick I learned. One of the major problems, you get paint all over your fingers when you're trying to paint. So what you can do, I'll just use one of my Blood Bowl miniatures here. So this is a Blood Bowl orc. Okay. And let's just say I've got them all nice and primed, and as I'm painting, I don't want to bump any of the stuff that I've already painted while it's drying. So what you can do here is you can take your forceps, clamp it down on any flat space that you don't mind leaving a few marks on. You got a nice little clamp there, and now I have a ton more control over my miniature. There we go. That's, as you can see, and I'm less likely to drop this as well. So if I'm painting real close and I'm using a lot of paint like this, I'm less likely to drop something that I've got my fingers stuck into, as opposed to holding a miniature like this and all of a sudden my finger slips and next thing you know, you got carpet shavings all over in your miniature. So that's what I like to use these for. Also they're great for just about anything. If you have a miniature that's got parts like arms, you can use this to kind of hook the arm in and brace it in one spot. It's just a great all-around purpose tool. Again, they're called, it's a medical clamp or a medical forceps. Again, you can go to any medical supply store, $2-3 tops. You might get a few weird looks from the cashier, but it's okay. Another thing you're going to want to invest in, glue. Again, brand is completely up to you. Some people like using gels, some people don't. Just depends on what you're liking to do. Obviously, you're going to want super glue of some sort to put your miniature on its base. Some miniatures, like I said, like Warhammer games, Games Workshop games, they come their miniatures come highly customizable, so you can attach different heads, arms, things like that. So you'll need to assemble your miniature, and that's where the glue comes in. Again, so you're going to want to just try out what works best for you. I got this at Meijer. I think I got a package of 4 for like $1. So it just depends, what you're looking at, but I wouldn't spend more than a couple of dollars on a tube of super glue. That's just me. All right. I guess this would fall as a good segue. So this kind of falls under paint and brush. So I picked these up at my local art supply store the other day. These are paint markers. These are great for super fine detail work. Like, for example, if you go on my Facebook page and you'll see the order of the stick miniatures that I did for a customer. They're stick figures, but they've got smiles and they've got little eye holes, and it's super difficult to get those smiles done because they're just in such a symmetrical line. Well, that's where these came in, is, you can get some nice outlining with your paint marker once everything dries, and you don't have to worry about the bristles going all over the place because this is a very solid, this is a pen, but it's a paint pen. So this is really good for super fine detail work, like small eyeballs, mouths, things like that. And I just got a couple. These were a little expensive. These are at the art supply store for like a couple of bucks, but I got a couple black ones. I might go back for different colors. but it just depends on what you want to do. But I highly recommend getting a couple of these just for some detail work. All right, now we're talked brushes. We've talked tools. Another tool, whether or not you want it or not, you can get a palette of some sort. Some people like them, some people don't. You can use a paper plate. Just, I wouldn't suggest something that doesn't require you to dump, paint on your table. That's just makes for easy cleanup. Obviously, you'll want a cup of some sort. I just used a glass I got from a beer festival one time in Kentucky. Something that you don't mind never drinking out of again, because you're going to get paint residue in it. And as this stuff is non-toxic, it still doesn't taste good. So you'll just want something small there. Don't use like a giant beer stein or something like that. And then last but not least, I always like to keep a rag around just for drying brushes, painting on, things like that. But then last but not least, what you're going to want is obviously paints. Now this is probably the most important thing that you will need to get to stockpile your miniatures painting. First off, you're going to want primers. Primers can come in one of a couple different forms. I've got, where'd it go? I think it's this one right here. Sorry about this, folks. I thought I had it on me. You can get brush-on primers, which is something like this. This is just a real basic brush-on primer. I've discovered this works really good if I'm doing individual miniatures and I don't want to wait too long for the primer to dry so I can get working on it. A lot of folks, what they'll like to do, though, is just go get a can of spray primer. The local Walmart, your whatever's close by. Again, primer is one of those things that you can go get at a hobby store or something, but it tends to be a little bit more expensive. I've discovered a good old-fashioned can of Rust-Oleum will do the trick. And we'll go into how to prime it later on a different video. I think my next video is going to be on painting techniques, so we'll get into that. But get yourself, a couple base color primers. Don't get anything wacky. Base neutral colors, black, white, brown, are probably about as frisky as I would get when it comes to primer, and I'll explain in the painting techniques video why. But black and white are typically good spray primers, like I said, and you don't have to get anything super fancy. Just a $2 can of Rust-Oleum at the local supermarket. Done. So that's because you're going to want to prime almost all your miniatures. Just about any miniature out there, I suggest, even if they say you don't need to prime them, I still suggest priming them. Just because of the nature of sometimes, plus if it's not primed, the paint may not stick. Even with pewter miniatures, you need to prime them, otherwise they won't stick. So yeah, you want primer. And then you're going to obviously want the paints. Now this is where a lot of choice comes in. There's multiple brands of paints out there of varying costs. I've seen pots of paint that range all the way up to $5 to tubes of paint at the local craft store for $2. It just depends. They're all varying qualities. They're all varying shades. It just depends on what you want to do. And again, trial and error. So I'm going to go everything that I know of, and then I'll let you make the decision. So first off, this is what I use. These are from Citadel Miniatures, or Games Workshop, if you will. These are their brand name miniature paints. They have about 300 pots of paint, and they do come in their own little pots. They're kind of cool like this, where you can just pop them open. I don't need a palette for these because the paint stays in the lid. If you can kind of see it there, there you go. They come in, like I said, they've got all kinds of shades and textures, and they've got base coats, they've got layers, they've got dry brushes, they've got technicals where like they've got this one I've got to call it looks like it's bright orange, but when it finally dries it ends up looking like a rust color, so it's great for when I'm doing tanks that have a little oxidation on them, stuff like that. This is actually kind of a cool one. It's called Astro Granite. It looks like basically gravel when I'm done painting with it. It's kind of cool. But these run, I want to say like $3.50 a pot, depending on where you go. So they are a little bit more on the expensive side. They do last a long while. That's the thing about with paints with your miniatures, is it's going to be an investment. So you're not going to have to buy them very often unless you let them dry out. But I prefer Citadel paints. That's just me. It's what I've always used. I've never had a whole lot of bad luck with them, and they come in a variety of shades. Downside to them was if you don't find a shade, you can't find a shade. They're really rough to kind of mix because they're all in their pots, and you have to pour it, and it gets all messy. And so, you know, but they do have. I mean, I'll be surprised if you can't find a shade from Games Workshop on when it comes to paints. But so you've got those. These are some other ones. These are Master Series paints. These are what a lot of people that paint Reaper miniatures will use. I think it's what they're doing. But a few of those, I think Privateer Press is coming out with their own ones, and these are in just like kind of like an eyedropper bottle. And again, these are coming in massive amounts of shades and colors. I've used these. These are pretty much supplementing my Citadel miniatures for the shades I don't have, or if I need to mix something, because I definitely like the fact that these come in basically, if you look, basically it's just a little eyedropper bottle, and I can just put a couple of drops in of whatever color on a paper plate or whatever, and I can mix colors. No big deal. So yeah, this is another version that some people like to use. Again, you need a palette or a paper plate or something that you'd be able to dribble this on. Like I said, that's one of the reasons I like using the Citadel miniatures, is because it's all there in one pot. I don't have to keep dribbling out. So again, personal preference, up to you. And then this is another one that some folks like to use. These you can find at about any craft supply store. These are those acrylic, usually used for like wood projects, like birdhouses, signs, stuff like that. Usually you can find these for like $3 for $2. I mean, this is a 2-ounce tube of paint. To be honest, there's no real reason you shouldn't be able to use this stuff. Again, totally up to you. I've never had a whole lot of good luck with this stuff. It's really thick. It does come in its own bottle, so you can mix at your leisure. If I have to use it, I've watered it down just a couple of drops. But it's acrylics. I don't know the real chemical difference between the two. The actual miniature paints, like say with Citadel and these. But I've never had a whole lot of good luck with these. I feel like I can't get enough detail out of this because of the thickness. So, but I have met some people that have had some fantastic luck with these, and they make their miniatures look fantastic. So, totally up to you on which type of paint you want to use. Like I said, totally subjective. If you go out there, I think there's just about any place that cranks out miniatures will probably have their own brand of paint. Now, they're going to swear by their brand of paint because, well, it makes them money. Duh. But again, there's nothing that says you have to be very brand specific. Totally up to you. Do believe I'm looking at my projects. I think that's pretty much it. Not seeing anything that will help you more. That's really the tools of the trade today, folks. So hope that was kind of informative. What I'll probably do is I'll probably put some buy links in the description where you can find certain paints, brushes, things like that. And if you do me a favor, if you like this and you like the idea of this particular series, then click like, subscribe, favorite, the whole 9 yards. That would be greatly appreciated. And we'll hopefully see you in the studio some more. I'll get some live events up. And this is Gravity Well Studios signing out. Have a good one.